Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Happy Easter to you all. And yeah, in today's video, we're just gonna have a little chat one-to-one, me and you, because I realized something that I've been struggling with in my trading recently. And I was also thinking about why that sort of happens. And I know for a fact that a lot of you have been struggling with the same sort of thing, but it very, very rarely gets spoken about on social media, by traders, anything like that, because I think a lot of people have too big of an ego to the point where they don't want to discuss this topic. But you know me, you know we're completely raw, and yeah, I'm going to talk you through exactly why I've been struggling with some fear around executing my trades and how that's been impacting my trading performance. And then we're going to go on to talk about why this happens for you guys and how you can fix it going forward in order to actually not struggle with this and improve your trading massively. Now, when I say fear of executing my trades, what I really mean is you see a setup print and you start to talk yourself out of it. Now, this is not always a bad thing, because you understand that a lot of times when you're talking yourself out of positions, or when you have some sort of, intuition in the background that actually might be telling you, okay, this is not a correct setup. But there is a difference between that and then when a perfect setup forms and you say to yourself, I don't want to take it because of this, and they're just kind of made up reasons. You need to be able to execute your trades with actual precision and confidence in the market. And today I actually had a position early on in the morning where my setup formed and I didn't take it. And in hindsight, looking back on it, that was purely fear as to why I didn't take that. Now, how does this impact your trading performance? Well, fear of taking positions is something that actually has a knock-on effect, because exactly what happened to me this morning, you get a perfect setup, you see a very good position, and then you go, no, I'm not going to take it. And then the move plays out in your favor, and then what do? An inexperienced trader most likely would try and FOMO back into the same move in order to catch it, because they knew they were right before, and then they lose, and then that leads to overtrading, revenge trades, etc., which is obviously not a good thing. Now, in my case this morning, this didn't happen. I actually just called it a day after that, and then went to the gym, came back, and actually saw another setup whilst I was on the way back, took that and took a small win. So perfect sort of play after that initial fear from me. But a lot of people tend to spiral. Once they have one bad psychological decision, they tend to spiral into many more. And this is why I wanted to talk to you about this topic, because a lot of people struggle with the same knock-on effect. So you get, like I said, you get up in the morning, you see your setup, you don't take it, you FOMO into the next setup, and then it spirals from there. Now, the main reason this happens, or the main thing we need to actually figure out, is why this is happening as a whole. Why are you fearful of executing these positions? Now, most gurus or most traders would say to you, you need to fix your psychology, you need to fix your mentality around taking positions, you need to fix your risk appetite, all that sort of thing. Great, cool. But let's take a step even further back and let's go into the bare bones of why this is actually happening. Because if you were a trader that had a proven setup, proven system backed by data, and your risk was, well within your risk appetite for your account, you're not going to have that fear. So before we even get to the psychological issues, we need to discuss actually your mechanical trading. How are you actually trading the markets? Do you have a system that's back tested and forward tested, and you have data behind it? And what I mean by that is, when I go and try and take my Skydweller play, okay, which I teach to my group, which I teach to the stream, when I go and take that play, I can go back through a year's data, a year's history, and say to myself, okay, cool. I know for a fact that over 200 trades, this has an 85% win rate, it has a 0.7 risk to reward, and it plays out with this much effectiveness. Whereas if you're going, okay, cool, this looks like it's going to continue up here, what then starts to creep in? It starts to creep in doubt. You're actually making the trade based off of intuition only, and you essentially have no backing behind the trade other than you yourself. And you guys know firsthand how easy it is to doubt yourself. So the first thing I want you to do if you're struggling with fear of overtrading is actually just take a step back and get some data behind your setups. Because, like I said, now instead of actually thinking, oh, is it me that's making a mistake here? Am I reading the charts correctly? You can now say, okay, cool, it's nothing to do with me. This is all to do with the data behind my system. And my system works, the data proves it, so I don't even need to doubt myself. All I need to think is, am I taking the correct setup? As in, is the setup formed correctly? If it is, let the data do the rest of the work. So that's point number one. Point number two is very simply, have you risked appropriately? Because let's say you've got a $10,000 account, okay? $10,000 account, and you're risking $2,000. That's 20%, right? And maybe that $2,000 is a lot of money for you. And now when you get into a position, all you are thinking of is, oh my God, I'm about to lose more than my rent. I'm about to lose this. I saved up this much. It took me this many months at my job to make this. Oh my God, oh my God. And now you're fearful of losing that large chunk of money. And what do? You don't take the trade. So that is exactly why you need to risk appropriately. Obviously, there's data behind it, and if you risk too much, you're going to be blowing your accounts in fewer trades, etc. But the main reason why I keep telling people to risk the correct amount is because if you are risking an amount that is significant to you, and this changes on trader to trader, okay, so maybe $50 is significant to you, maybe 10K is not significant to you. I don't know your situation, but if you're risking an amount that is way too large for what you can actually stomach losing, you are then going to actually have so many emotions that are creeping in, not only before the trade, but also whilst you're in it. And your brain and your subconscious knows this. So what does it do? It protects itself, it protects its money, and it actually just doesn't take the position. And then, like I said, this is a poor trading habit because you're not taking the setups that are ideal for you. And then it leads to that spiraling emotion, it leads to everything like that. And this is essentially where traders make the key error, which is not taking a setup and then FOMOing in afterwards. It's an absolute account killer. That is the mechanical and the actual data-based reasoning on why you are struggling to execute your trades, or why you're having fear of actually taking these positions. But now let's talk about the psychological reasons, because even though the first thing is going to mitigate that psychological impact, this is still an issue even if you've done those things correctly. So even if you've done your journaling, you've done your back testing, and you risk appropriately, guess what? Psychologically, you are still going to have these issues. Now, whilst those first two things mitigate that, we need to actually focus on how to rewire our brain in order to actually be able to take these positions. And this goes back to evolution. It goes back to exactly how humans are wired. But essentially what we're talking about right now is humans are wired to avoid pain. We are wired to essentially survive. And in that situation, it's better for us to avoid pain than it is for us to chase some crazy reward. So you can imagine this exactly like when we were caveman, right? You're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, but there's actually a woolly mammoth down the road and you want to go and hunt it and eat it for food. What are you going to do? Well, human nature is going to tell us exactly what to do here. It's literally going to say, hide until that tiger is away, and then you can go out and go get food afterwards, because we are hardwired by nature to survive. Now, the same thing applies in trading. If you're focusing on your losses and tying your ego and your self-worth to your trading, what are you going to be thinking before you enter the trade? You're going to be thinking, if I lose this trade, maybe I'm a bad trader, or if I lose this trade, I'm going to lose this money. So you need to essentially remove any external situations from your trading. You need to remove your ego from your trading. You need to say to yourself, okay, maybe this trade is a loss, maybe it's a win, but guess what? The system's profitable. And you need to remove the external end result of the trade, because you cannot control the end result. All you can control as a trader is saying to yourself, okay, my setup is formed, I'm taking the position with adequate risk, my stops are below this level, my TP's at this level, and then you let the market do the rest. Because essentially this is the only way to remove that fear aspect from your brain. You are going to be stuck in a situation where all you're thinking before a trade is you're either going to get euphoric at the thought of a win and you're going to calculate how much profit you can make, or you're going to be so scared of taking that loss that exactly the point of this video, you're not going to take the trade. So what am I doing to fix this problem, and what am I doing actually going forward to continue to execute my trades effectively? Well, in the past, all I've done is size down during a period of this. So I size down essentially to allow myself to be happy with the risk I'm taking, to the point where even it gets where I don't care if I take a loss because the number is so small in my, in my outlook. Whereas, if you're playing with full size or a quite aggressive size, as I was before, it can get to the point where now you do get sort of scared of taking trades. And then there's an even further knock-on effect where inconsistency and actually failing to execute these trades and missed opportunities is going to eat at your confidence even more than it would have done if you just took a loss. Because now you're not trusting yourself to even take the trades. Whereas before, all you had was a fear of the markets and a fear that your setup wouldn't play. But now you're adding in, oh, I don't even know if I'm going to take the trade when it forms. So one of the main things I did, like I said, is sizing down. And the next thing is also just executing through it, okay? You just have to push through it, the same as anything. You know, I went for a run this morning. I did not want to go for a run. But I knew that if I just said to myself and gave in and said I didn't want to go for a run, okay, cool, let me just not go, I probably wouldn't run for the next month. Because I know for a fact that once you actually build that pattern of inconsistency and actually mistrust within yourself, that is when your bad habits get actually built even further into your deep psyche, and you're essentially breeding this bad habit into your actual trading, and it's just going to give you that knock-on effect down further the road. So realistically, size down and just execute through it, okay? If you get to the point where you are not taking trades because of fear, I want you to actually, and you're not going to hear this from many gurus, I want you to actually execute trades a lot more aggressively, okay? And what that means is you have to fight the other way. You have to push through it, and you have to show your mentality who's actually boss. Because at the end of the day, your emotions are just that. They are just emotions within you. They are not your brain. You can override your emotions. And if you choose to do that, eventually this pattern of your emotions playing before your trades will disappear. So sizing down is one, and actually executing through it is another. Because like I said, building that confidence, and it might even just be taking small wins or even take small losses. Who cares? Just take some positions in order to actually get through this sort of roadblock that you're sitting at. Now, the next fix that I have for you is very, very simple. What I want you to do is start a psychology journal. Now, I have a free one. I'm going to drop a link down to it in the description. But essentially, start journaling your psychology throughout your trades. So before the trade, how do you feel? If you get in the trade, how did you feel when you got into the trade? If you didn't get into the trade, why is that? What exactly was the hesitation that caused you not to execute the trade? Now, if after that you're saying, well, actually, price action formed like this, okay, cool. But you have to be brutally honest with yourself and say, was there actually any problem with my trade, or was this an emotional hesitation to the point where actually I decided not to take the trade because I was so scared of losing? And you can write this down, and when you are writing it down, whether it's in the journal that I'm going to give you in the description, or whether it's on a physical piece of pen and paper, you are essentially putting it out into the real world, and you're making that hesitation real so that you can actually think, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. I'm actually having this issue. Let me go about and fix it. Because until then, until you actually acknowledge the problem that you're having, you're not going to be able to fix anything. And finally, if you haven't already, what I want you to actually be doing here is build yourself a rules-based execution system. So I want you to actually write down in the simplest language possible what your setup is, how it forms, and how you get your entries. So for me, in this case, that would literally be something like wait for a closure above the range, wait for a liquidity grab and a retest of the level, and enter off of that retest. Or failing that, enter off of a bullish or bearish closure after that retest. And that is as simple as it is. And the moment that you see this setup form, you know, you can actually execute it. Now, I don't care what strategy you trade. It could be ICT, it could be anything. You could wait for a, you know, change of character, then you could wait for a bounce off a fair value gap, bullish close, candle flip, whatever it is, okay? Write down exactly what your entry is, and once that forms, you have to force yourself to take it. And focus on exactly what I'm talking about here. Focus on actually just getting into the trade. Don't focus on winning those trades. Don't focus on whether they're going to lose or not. Focus on waiting for that setup to form and then getting in them. And that is literally it. And like I said, start small, size down to the point where it's not going to affect your account if you do take a few losses. But what's most likely going to happen when you do size down is your emotions are going to be completely gone from the trade, and you're going to start winning like crazy because you've done exactly what I've said. You've built yourself a sustainable and consistent trading plan. And most likely you need to size down anyway, because 99% of people over risk on their positions as it is. So if you implement what I'm telling you to do right now, that is going to be a massive fix for you. And like I said, most likely what is going to happen is you're going to slowly start to build up those wins, and that's going to generate your confidence. But then Don't size up too quickly back to your size that you were at before, okay? Maybe size up another half or another 20% of what you had before, and just increase it slowly and slowly and slowly to the point where now you're not even thinking about the profit or the loss or the win or whatever it is. You're just thinking about, okay, cool, my trade's formed, I'm taking it. Can I afford to size up? Probably not yet. Okay, cool. Just continue to do what I want to do. And that's how trading should be. It should literally be a process based off of your system, based off of your trades, and that is purely it. And I promise you, once you implement this, that is going to be an absolute game changer for you. Remember, at the end of the day, you're the one who's pressing the buttons, you're the one who's executing the trades, and you're the one whose portfolio is either going to go up or down based on these positions. So I can sit here and tell you as much as I want, and trust me, I will. I'll continue to make as many YouTube videos as I possibly can to help you guys and, you know, continue to give value. But at the end of the day, you have to take initiative yourself. You have to be the one that builds that discipline. And that discipline is not built through someone like me telling you what to do. I can only show you which way to go in order to build that discipline, which is what I've done throughout this entire video. But you are the one who has to build that consistency, and that is purely done through repetition. Okay, repetition, repetition, repetition. 99% of the traders that you see out there, including me, have been in the game 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even more years. So if most traders have taken 4 or 5 years to get to the point where they're consistently profitable and consistently making good money, how do you think that you can do it without putting in that amount of reps, okay? It's not a coincidence that these traders take so long to achieve this such greatness, okay? All that they are doing is essentially learning the strategy for the first year, and they're not spending 5, 6, 7 years learning a strategy or learning psychology. They're spending the rest of those years putting in the reps, making the mistakes and correcting them in order to actually build a valid and actual, you know, disciplined psychology within themselves and trade management plan. And that is what they're doing going forward, and that is what you need to do. Just put in the reps, take those positions, journal those trades, journal your psychology, and I promise you, if you put in the time and if you put in the reps, you are going to get there, okay? But it's just a matter of doing exactly what I said. So to recap, size down, work through this psychological error that you're having by essentially starting small and executing nonetheless, okay? Get your size to a point where the trade doesn't even matter, okay? Just execute. But don't go back to paper trading, because I promise you that is when the fear completely disappears, and then once you come back to a live account, you're going to have the exact same issue, okay? So paper trading is not a solution to this. You need to work through the problem on your live account or on your funded account. Size down a little bit, work through it, journal your trades, and if you haven't already, make sure that your strategy is back tested or forward tested or has data behind it that proves that every single trade that you're taking actually is profitable in the long term. And if you do this, I promise you, like I said, you are going to be an absolutely incredible trader. It's only a matter of time, okay? Don't beat yourself up for the fact that you're having fear. Fear is a completely normal human emotion. You're not weak just because sometimes you have fear of executing trades. You know, it's a part of every trader's game, and essentially you can't avoid it, but you have to work your way through it. Now, if you did enjoy this video, drop a like and subscribe. I'll drop a link to that journal down below in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.